He looked at his wife, wearing that faded, oversized sweater, stirring soup in their cramped kitchen, and felt nothing but resentment. Nathaniel thought he had outgrown her. He thought the sleek, ambitious woman waiting in his Porsche was his ticket to the high life. He signed the divorce papers on the kitchen counter, unaware that the ink was barely dry before his entire world would flip. He didn't just leave his pregnant wife that night. He walked out on the hidden owner of the very empire he was desperate to rule. When the truth finally hit him, it wouldn't just cost him his job. It would cost him his soul. This is the story of how Nathaniel Sterling lost everything to find out who was really in charge. The rain over Manhattan was relentless, hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse suite at the Obsidian, one of New York City's most exclusive hotels. But inside, the storm felt miles away. The air smelled of expensive leather and aged scotch. Nathaniel Nate Sterling adjusted his cufflinks, a gift from Sasha, and checked his reflection in the darkened glass. He looked the part. 32 years old, sharp jawline, a suit that cost more than his father's car. He was the newly appointed director of operations. It was the role he had bled for, sweating through 7 years of architectural school and 5 years of grinding in mid-management. His phone buzzed. A text from Sasha. "Champagne is on ice. Don't be late. Make it clean." Nate felt a tightening in his chest, a mixture of adrenaline and guilt, though he quickly smothered the latter. He had a plan. He always had a plan. He left the hotel and drove his company-leased Audi through the slick streets of the Upper East Side, heading toward Queens. The transition was jarring, from the limestone facades of Fifth Avenue to the brick walk-ups of Astoria. He parked down the block from his own apartment, needing the walk to steel himself. When he opened the door, the smell of roasted garlic and rosemary hit him. It was a smell that used to mean home. Now, it just smelled like stagnation. Isabella was in the kitchen. She was 29, but looked younger tonight, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing that oversized grey sweater he used to love. She turned, her face lighting up with a softness that made Nate look away. "You're early," she said, wiping her hands on a towel. "I made the pot roast. I know it's a celebration. The promotion. I'm so proud of you, Nate." Nate didn't take off his coat. He stood by the kitchen island, placing his hands flat on the cool granite. "We need to talk, Bella." Isabella froze. The smile didn't disappear instantly. It faded in slow motion, confused by the coldness in his tone. "Okay. Did something happen with the board? Did Mr. Covington say something?" "This isn't about Covington. It's about us." Nate reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He slid it across the counter, pushing aside the bowl of salad she had just prepared. "What is this?" "Separation papers," Nate said. His voice was steady, rehearsed. "I've already signed them. The apartment is yours. I'll pay the lease for the next year. I'm also giving you a lump sum of $50,000 to help you transition." Isabella stared at the envelope, as if it were a bomb. "Transition? Nate, what are you talking about? We were talking about baby names last week." "You were talking about names. I was listening," Nate corrected sharply. "Look, Bella, let's be real. We don't fit anymore. You're happy here. With the pot roast and the small life and the coupons, I'm running $100 million asset now. I need a partner who understands that world, who can navigate galas, who understands the politics of high society." "And I can't learn." Her voice cracked. "I supported you when you were a junior draftsman making copies, Nate. I worked 2 jobs so you could take those extra certifications." "And I appreciate that," Nate said, checking his watch. "But I've outgrown this. I've outgrown us. Isabella's hand instinctively went to her stomach. She took a breath, her eyes welling with tears. Nate, you can't leave now. Not now. There is never a good time, Bella. It's better to do it now than to drag it out and resent each other. No, I mean now, she whispered, her voice trembling. I went to Dr. Evans this morning. I'm pregnant. 10 weeks. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. The rain lashed against the window pane. Nate looked at her stomach, then back at her face. For a second, a flicker of shock crossed his eyes. But then the image of Sasha, waiting in a silk dress with a bottle of Dom Perignon, flashed in his mind. Sasha, whose father was on the city council. Sasha, who fit the image of the man he wanted to be. He let out a cynical laugh. Really? That's your play? The trapped card? Isabella recoiled as if he had slapped her. My play? It's our child. Or it's a desperate lie to keep me here, Nate said, buttoning his coat. If you are pregnant, we'll handle child support through the lawyers. But I'm not staying for a baby, Bella. I'm not sacrificing my future for a mistake. He turned toward the door. Nate! She screamed, a sound of raw, tearing heartbreak. If you walk out that door, you don't get to come back. You don't get to be a father when it's convenient for your image. I'll take my chances, Nate said, opening the door. Goodbye, Bella. He walked out into the rain, leaving the door unlocked behind him. He didn't look back. He got into his car, exhaled a long breath, and typed a message to Sasha. It's done. I'm coming home. Back in the kitchen, Isabella sank to the floor, the envelope still unopened on the counter. She wrapped her arms around her stomach and sobbed until her throat burned. Then, slowly, the sobbing stopped. The heartbreak hardened into something colder, something sharper. She reached for her phone, her hands shaking, and dialed a number she hadn't called in 5 years. Grandmother, Isabella said, her voice jagged but determined. A stern, elegant voice answered on the other end, speaking with a slight Italian inflection. Isabella, is everything all right? No, Isabella said, wiping her face. You were right. About him. About everything. I am sorry to hear that, cara mia, the old woman said, her tone softening. What do you need? I need you to reinstate my access, Isabella said, staring at the empty space where Nate used to stand. And I need to call a board meeting for the Aurora collection, specifically regarding the management of the Obsidian in New York. Isabella, her grandmother warned gently, if you step back into this world, there is no hiding in Astoria anymore. You become who you were born to be. Isabella looked at the cold separation papers. I know. I'm ready to be Isabella Rossellini again. And I want to make sure the new director of operations knows exactly who he works for. 3 months had passed since the night Nate walked out. Life with Sasha Montgomery was exactly what Nate had convinced himself he wanted. They lived in a sprawling loft in Tribeca, with exposed brick and abstract art that Nate pretended to understand. Sasha was vibrant, ambitious, and undeniably gorgeous. She worked in PR for a luxury fashion house, and together they were a power couple. They were invited to gallery openings, charity galas, and rooftop parties. But the shine was beginning to feel a lot like glare. Nate, you're not listening to me, Sasha snapped, snapping her fingers in front of his face. They were at a brunch spot in Soho, the kind of place where the avocado toast cost $25, and the waitstaff looked like runway models. I am listening, Nate said, rubbing his temples. He hadn't slept well in weeks. You want to go to St. Bart's for the winter solstice. I need to go to St. Bart's, Sasha corrected, sipping her mimosa. Everyone is going. And if you're going to be the general manager of the Obsidian by next year, we need to network with the right people. The owner of the hotel is rumored to be spending time there. The owner. That was the source of Nate's insomnia. Since taking over as director of operations, Nate had been haunted by the ownership group. He had never met them. No one at the hotel had. They operated through a terrifyingly efficient law firm called Pendleton and Associates. Every decision Nate made was scrutinized. He had tried to change the floral arrangements in the lobby to tropical birds of paradise. Rejected. He tried to switch the linen supplier to save 15%. Rejected. He proposed a modern redesign of the hotel's historic ballroom. Rejected, with a note that simply said, "Lacks soul." "I can't take time off, Sasha," Nate said, his patience fraying. "The anonymous owner has demanded a full audit of the guest experience protocols. They're sending a proxy next week to evaluate me." Sasha rolled her eyes. "You're letting them walk all over you. You're the visionary, Nate. That's why I'm with you. Because you take charge. Don't tell me you're turning into a pushover." The comment stung, mostly because it reminded him of what he had told Bella. "I need a partner who understands this world." Sasha understood it. Sure, but she had zero empathy for the work it took to stay there. "I'm not a pushover. I'm being vetted," Nate snapped. "Well, fix it," she said, checking her makeup in her phone camera. "Oh, and by the way, did you sign the check for the deposit on the Hamptons rental? My dad is asking." Nate clenched his jaw. His salary was high, but Sasha's lifestyle was astronomical. Between the loft, the leasing, the dinners, and her expectations, he was burning through cash faster than he made it. "I'll handle it," he muttered. Later that afternoon, Nate arrived at the Obsidian. The hotel was a masterpiece of Art Deco design. Black marble floors, gold inlays and velvet drapery. It was dark, moody, and seductive. He walked to the reception desk, where the concierge, an older man named Elias, who had been there for 20 years, was sorting mail. "Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling," Elias said. Elias was polite, but there was always a glint in his eye that Nate didn't like. A look that said, "I've seen men like you come and go." "Elias, has the package from Pendleton arrived?" "It has, sir. It's on your desk, marked urgent." Nate marched into his office, a glass-walled enclosure overlooking the lobby. He ripped open the envelope. Inside was a single dossier, bound in navy blue leather. The cover read, "Project Renewal, Strategic Overview." He opened it. It wasn't just a review, it was a dissection. Someone had gone through his last 3 months of reports with a scalpel. There were red notes in the margins, critiquing everything from staff scheduling to the background music playlist. One note, written in elegant, sharp cursive, made his blood freeze. Next to his proposal to remove the complimentary midnight hot chocolate service for guests to cut costs, the note read, "Hospitality is not about efficiency, Mr. Sterling. It is about memory. The hot chocolate stays. It reminds people of home. Do not strip the warmth out of this hotel just because you have forgotten what it feels like." Nate stared at the handwriting, the loop of the Y, the sharp cross of the T. It felt vaguely familiar, tickling the back of his brain, but he couldn't place it. It was authoritative, aristocratic. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Sterling," his assistant's voice came through. "Mr. Daniel Pendleton is here to see you, and he brought a guest." Nate straightened his tie. Daniel Pendleton was the shark of a lawyer who represented the Rossellini Family Trust, the entity behind the Aurora collection. "Send them in." The door opened. Daniel Pendleton walked in first, a man in his 60s, silver-haired, wearing a suit that whispered old money. But Nate barely looked at him. His eyes were fixed on the woman walking in behind him. She was stunning. She wore a tailored cream business suit that hugged a figure that was clearly, visibly pregnant, perhaps 5 or 6 months along. She wore oversized sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured her face. She carried a Birkin bag that cost more than Nate's car. "Mr. Sterling," Pendleton said, his voice like gravel. "We felt it was time for a site visit." "Of course," Nate said, stepping out from behind his desk, putting on his best charm. "It's an honor. And this is—" The woman reached up and slowly removed her sunglasses. Nate's smile died on his lips. His knees actually buckled, forcing him to grab the edge of his desk for support. Her hair was cut into a sharp, chic bob. Her makeup was flawless, highlighting cheekbones he had touched 1,000 times. But the eyes, those deep, brown eyes, were the same. It was Bella, but it wasn't the Bella who wore oversized sweaters and clipped coupons. This woman radiated power. She looked at him not with love, and not even with hate. She looked at him like he was a stain on the carpet she was deciding whether to clean or just replace. "Hello, Nathaniel," she said. Her voice was smoother, lower, stripped of the Queen's accent she used to have. It was the voice of someone who grew up in boarding schools in Switzerland. "Bella!" Nate choked out, his brain misfiring. What are you doing here? How did you get in here?" She didn't answer him. She turned to Mr. Pendleton. "Daniel," she said, gesturing around the office. "The feng shui is terrible. It's too cold, too aggressive. We'll need to remodel this office entirely if we're going to keep the current management." "Agreed, Ms. Rossellini," Pendleton said. "Rossellini," Nate whispered. "Bella, your last name is Rossi." She turned back to him, a small, pitying smile playing on her lips. "Rossi is what I used when I wanted to be normal, Nate. When I wanted to see if a man could love me for me, and not for the billions my family owns." She placed a hand protectively over her baby bump. "I got my answer." Nate felt the room spinning. The Aurora collection. The Rossellini family. They were European royalty of the hotel world. They owned properties in Monaco, Dubai, London, and the Obsidian. You own this hotel?" Nate stammered. "I own the building, Nate," Bella said, walking over to the window and looking out at the city rain. "I own the land it sits on. I own the brand. And as of this morning, I have resumed my position as the chairwoman of the board." She turned around, her eyes hardening into diamonds. "Which means, Nathaniel, I am your boss, and we have a lot of work to do." The silence in the glass-walled office was absolute, save for the rhythmic tapping of Isabella's manicured nail against the leather cover of the dossier. Nate stood. He couldn't bring himself to sit. His legs felt like they were filled with lead, and his heart was hammering against his ribs so hard he feared she could see it through his suit jacket. Daniel Pendleton, the lawyer, stood silently by the door like a sentinel, his expression unreadable. "Please, sit down, Nathaniel," Isabella said. She didn't look up. She was reading a page of the report, his report, with a frown of concentration that used to appear when she was checking grocery receipts for errors. Now it was applied to multi-million-dollar revenue streams. Nate sank into the chair opposite her. "Bella, I don't understand. Why? Why lie for 5 years?" Isabella stopped reading. She slowly closed the folder and clasped her hands over it. Her eyes, dark and impenetrable, finally locked onto his. "I didn't lie, Nate. I omitted," she said calmly. "I told you I came from a family of hoteliers. I told you I was estranged from them because I wanted a simpler life. You never asked for the name. You never asked for the details. You were too busy telling me about your plans, your vision, your climb. I was trying to build a life for us, Nate protested, his voice sounding thin. No, she corrected, her voice devoid of anger, which made it terrifying. You were building a life for you. I was just the audience. She took a sip of water from a crystal glass. But we are not here to discuss our failed marriage. We are here to discuss the failing standards of the Obsidian. Nate blinked. Failing? Our occupancy is up 4% this quarter. And our guest satisfaction score regarding warmth and hospitality is down 12%, Isabella countered instantly. You cut the fresh orchids in the lobby and replace them with high-end silk replicas to save $3,000 a month. You replace the concierge night staff with an automated kiosk check-in for VIPs. She stood up, struggling slightly with the weight of her pregnancy. Nate instinctively twitched to help her, but Daniel stepped forward before Nate could even rise. Isabella waved Daniel away and walked toward the office door. Walk with me, Mr. Sterling. It wasn't a request. For the next 2 hours, Nate lived through a waking nightmare. They walked the hotel floor, a procession of 3, Isabella leading, radiating an effortless authority, Nate trailing like a scolded schoolboy, and Daniel Pendleton silently taking notes on an iPad. Everywhere they went, the staff froze. They didn't know who she was. Bella Rossellini had been out of the public eye for years, but they recognized power when they saw it. She stopped at the hotel bar, the Velvet Room. It was dimly lit, designed for secrets and seduction. The bartender, a young man named Leo, looked up nervously. "1 sparkling water with a twist of lime, please," Isabella ordered. She turned to Nate while they waited. "Do you know Leo's mother's name?" Nate frowned. "What?" "No. I have 400 employees, Bella. Leo's mother is named Maria. She's currently in the hospital, recovering from hip surgery. The previous director of operations, Mr. Henderson, sent flowers. You, however, denied Leo's request for 2 days of compassionate leave last week." Nate's jaw tightened. "We were understaffed. It was a business decision." Isabella took the water Leo handed her. She smiled at the bartender, a genuine, warm smile that transformed her face back into the woman Nate had married. "Thank you, Leo. I hope Maria is recovering well. Tell her the Rossellini family sends their regards." Leo's eyes widened. "The Rossellini family. Thank you, Mum. Thank you so much." She turned back to Nate, the warmth instantly evaporating. "A hotel is not a building, Nathaniel. It is a feeling. People pay $800 a night here, not for the bed, but to feel seen, to feel important. When you treat the staff like cogs, they treat the guests like numbers. It is a contagion." She took a sip of water and lowered her voice, stepping into his personal space. He could smell her perfume, something floral and expensive, sandalwood and jasmine. It was new. "You called me simple the night you left," she whispered. "You said I was happy with a small life. You mistook humility for lack of ambition. I was trained in the grandest hotels in Geneva and Paris before I was 20. I know this business better than you ever will, because I was born in it. You are playing a role, Nate. I am the hotel." Nate felt a bead of sweat trickle down his back. "So what happens now? You fire me. Is that the revenge?" Isabella looked him up and down, her gaze lingering on his expensive Italian shoes bought with the raise he got for leaving her. "Fire you?" "No," she said lightly. "That would be too easy, and besides, the board is skeptical of a sudden leadership change right before the Winter Gala. You have a contract, and I intend to make you earn every cent of it." She handed her empty glass to a passing waiter. "You will fix the morale issues. You will restore the budget for the fresh flowers, and you will report directly to me every morning at 8 a.m. for a strategy review. If the numbers and the soul of this hotel aren't rectified in 60 days, I won't just fire you, Nathaniel. I will ensure you never work in luxury hospitality again. I will blacklist you from New York to Tokyo. She checked her watch. I'm tired. My driver is outside. We will meet tomorrow. 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. She walked away toward the elevators, Daniel trailing behind her. Nate stood in the middle of the lobby bar. The jazz music played softly. The glasses clinked. But all Nate could hear was the blood rushing in his ears. He looked at his reflection in the mirror behind the bar. He looked pale, hollow. He had wanted a challenge. He had wanted the big league. He had gotten it. Nate didn't go home immediately. He sat in his car in the parking garage for an hour, his forehead resting against the steering wheel. His phone buzzed incessantly. 7 texts from Sasha. Where are you? The dinner reservation was at 8. You're embarrassing me, Nate. He finally drove to the Tribeca loft. When he walked in, the lights were dim, and the atmosphere was icy. Sasha was sitting on the white leather sofa, scrolling through her phone, wearing a cocktail dress that looked uncomfortable. You're 2 hours late, she said, not looking up. I had to cancel Le Coucou. Do you know how hard it is to get a table there? I'm sorry, Nate muttered, loosening his tie. He felt exhausted in his bones. Work was complicated. Complicated how? Sasha stood up, her eyes narrowing. Did the audit go bad? Did the proxy show up? Nate walked to the kitchen and poured himself a heavy glass of bourbon. He looked at Sasha. She was beautiful, objectively. Sharp features, blonde hair styled to perfection, a body honed by Pilates and expensive juice cleanses. But looking at her now, all he felt was fatigue. The owner showed up, Nate said, taking a drink. Sasha's eyes lit up. The anger vanished, replaced by hunger. The owner, the actual owner, who is it? Someone famous? Nate hesitated. The lie formed in his throat, bitter and necessary. If he told Sasha that the owner was the pregnant wife he had abandoned 3 months ago, Sasha wouldn't offer support. She would scream. She would realize her investment in Nate was about to crash. Sasha didn't do failure. It's a representative of the Rossellini family, Nate said carefully. A woman. Rossellini, Sasha gasped. Nate, that's old European money. That is huge. Did you charm her? Did you mention the St. Bart's idea? I didn't have time to charm her, Sasha. She spent 3 hours tearing apart my management style. Sasha walked over and placed her hands on his chest, her touch possessive rather than comforting. She's testing you. That's what billionaires do. You just need to show her you're one of them. We need to host a dinner. Invite her here. I'll hire a private chef. We'll show her we fit the brand. Nate laughed, a dry, humorless sound. The idea of Bella sitting at this glass dining table, watching Sasha pretend to be the lady of the house, was so absurd it made him dizzy. No dinner, Nate said sharply. She's strictly business, cold. She doesn't want friends. Sasha pulled back, offended. Everyone wants friends, Nate. You just need to know how to play the game. God, do I have to do everything for you? Maybe I should stop by the hotel and say hello. No, Nate snapped. His voice echoed off the high ceilings. Sasha froze, shocked by his volume. Nate never raised his voice. He was always the calm, collected one. You will not come to the hotel, Nate said, lowering his voice, trying to steady his trembling hands. She is eccentric. She hates distractions. If you show up, she'll think I can't separate my personal life from my work. Please, Sasha. Let me handle this. Sasha stared at him for a long moment, assessing him. You're sweating, Nate. You look like you're about to crack. I'm just tired. The pressure is immense. If I lose this job, Sasha, we lose the loft, the car, everything." That got her attention. Sasha looked around the apartment at the lifestyle she felt entitled to. Her expression softened, not out of empathy, but out of self-preservation. "Okay," she said, smoothing his lapel. "Okay, focus on work. But you owe me. The Winter Gala is coming up in 2 weeks. I bought a dress that costs $4,000. I expect to be on your arm, and I expect to be introduced to this Rossellini woman as your partner." Nate closed his eyes. The Winter Gala. The biggest event of the year at the Obsidian. "Yeah," Nate whispered. "Of course." The next 2 weeks were a blur of torture. Every morning at 8 a.m., Nate stood in Bella's office. She had remodeled it overnight. The cold glass and chrome were gone, replaced by warm walnut wood, velvet armchairs and soft lighting. It looked like a study in a grand Italian villa. She sat behind the desk, her belly growing more visible beneath her designer maternity wear. She never raised her voice. She simply asked questions he couldn't answer. Why is the housekeeping turnover rate at 18%? Why are we sourcing wine from this distributor when the markup is 30% higher than direct import? Why did you fire the pastry chef who had been here for 10 years? Nate scrambled. He stayed at the hotel until midnight every night, frantically learning the details he had previously ignored. He started eating lunch in the cafeteria with the staff, trying to win back the morale she demanded. He was exhausted, but the worst part wasn't the work. It was her. She was glowing. Despite the pregnancy fatigue, Bella looked powerful. She commanded the room. He watched her handle a difficult vendor on the phone in fluent Italian, her voice melodic and fierce. He remembered when she used to speak Italian to him in bed, whispering sweet nothings. Now, she spoke it like a weapon. He started to see the woman he had missed while he was too busy looking for an upgrade. He realized that the simple Bella wasn't simple at all. She was restrained. She had been holding back her power so he wouldn't feel overshadowed. And now that she had unleashed it, he felt microscopic. On a Tuesday evening, late, Nate was in his office, burying his face in his hands. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," he croaked. It was Bella. She was holding a takeout container. The smell hit him instantly, roasted garlic and rosemary. She placed it on his desk. "You look terrible, Nathaniel," she said. "I'm working," he said defensively, "trying to meet your standards. You're not eating, and when you don't eat, your brain slows down, and I need your brain working." She gestured to the container. "Eat." Nate opened it. It was pot roast, not the hotel version. Her version, the one she used to make in Astoria. He looked up at her, his eyes stinging. "Why?" "Because the baby is kicking," she said, her hand resting on her stomach. "And it makes me sentimental. And because I don't hate you, Nate, I pity you." "Pity?" Nate asked, his voice cracking. "You chased a shiny object," she said softly. "You thought the suit, the title, and the power couple image would make you feel complete. But look at you. You're miserable. You're terrified." She sat on the edge of the desk, looking down at him. "How is she?" "Sasha." Nate flinched at the name. "She's fine." "Does she know?" Bella asked. "Does she know you abandoned a pregnant wife? Does she know who I am?" "No," Nate admitted, looking at the pot roast. "She thinks you're just a board member." Bella sighed, a sound of genuine disappointment. "You're building another house of cards, Nate. Just like you did with me. You lie to keep the peace, and then you run when the truth gets too heavy." She stood up. "The Winter Gala is in 3 days. I have decided to make a public address. I will be introducing myself as the owner of the Obsidian and the head of the Rossellini Trust. Nate's blood ran cold. Publicly. The press will be there. Yes, and I expect my director of operations to be there, front and center. With his partner. She walked to the door, then paused. Bring Sasha, Nate. I think it's time we finally met. I'm sure she's charming. She left the room. Nate stared at the closed door, the smell of rosemary filling the air, realizing that in 3 days his two worlds were going to collide, and the explosion would likely destroy whatever was left of him. The day of the winter gala arrived under a blanket of steel-grey clouds, burying New York City in a slushy, miserable freeze. But inside the Sterling Montgomery loft in Tribeca, the temperature was boiling. Nate stood in the bathroom, staring at his reflection. He looked older. The lines around his eyes had deepened in the last 2 weeks. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to wash away the nausea that had become his constant companion. "Nate, zip me up!" Sasha's voice rang out from the bedroom, sharp and impatient. He walked out, drying his hands. Sasha was standing in front of the floor-length mirror. She was wearing the emerald green gown she had obsessively talked about for days. It was backless, sequined, and cut dangerously low, a dress designed to scream for attention. It was beautiful, but on her it felt like armor. "Careful with the zipper," she warned as his fumbling fingers touched the fabric. "It's silk chiffon. If you snag it, that's $4,000 down the drain." "You look incredible," Nate said, the words tasting like ash. "I know," she said, smoothing her hips. She turned to face him, her eyes scanning his tuxedo. "Your tie is crooked. Fix it. Tonight is important, Nate." I looked up the guest list. The deputy mayor is coming, 2 hedge fund managers from BlackRock, and obviously this Rossellini woman. She stepped closer, adjusting his lapel with aggressive precision. "I've been doing some research on the Rossellini family," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "They are notoriously private. Old Catholic money. They value tradition and family. So, here is the strategy. We are the perfect modern couple. Successful, attractive, unburdened by kids. We represent the new energy the hotel needs." Nate felt his stomach lurch. Unburdened by kids. "Sasha," Nate started, his voice barely a whisper. "About tonight. The owner, Miss Rossellini, she can be unpredictable. If she says something strange, just ignore it." Sasha laughed, applying a final coat of dark red lipstick. "Nate, stop being so nervous. I can handle a rich eccentric. I deal with divas in fashion every day. Just make sure you introduce me immediately. I don't want to be standing awkwardly by the bar while you schmooze." She grabbed her clutch and headed for the door, not waiting for him. "Come on. The car is downstairs. Let's go conquer the world." The drive to the Obsidian was silent. Nate stared out the window as the city lights blurred into streaks of red and white. He felt like a man being driven to his own execution. When they arrived, the hotel was transformed. The exterior was bathed in soft amber light. A red carpet stretched up the steps, flanked by security and paparazzi. Nate stepped out, the flashbulbs blinding him. He reached back to help Sasha, who emerged with a practiced smile, waving at cameras that weren't necessarily pointed at her. They walked into the lobby, and Nate's breath caught. It was breathtaking. Under his management, the lobby had been cold, minimalist, efficient. But tonight, it was alive. Thousands of white lilies, Bella's favorite flower, filled the air with a heavy, intoxicating scent. Candles flickered on every surface. A string quartet played Debussy in the corner. It didn't feel like a hotel, it felt like a grand, historic home. "Wow," Sasha whispered, actually impressed. Okay, she has taste. Mr. Sterling, a voice rumbled. Nate turned to see Elias, the head concierge. Elias was wearing his dress uniform, looking regal. He nodded to Nate, but his eyes slid to Sasha with a look of cool appraisal. The VIP reception is in the gold ballroom, Elias said. Ms. Rossellini requested your presence immediately upon arrival. She's already here, Nate asked, checking his watch. It was early. Ms. Rossellini has been here since 6 a.m., ensuring every petal is perfect, Elias said dryly. She takes her ownership, personally. Nate took Sasha's arm. Her grip was tight, her nails digging into his suit jacket. They navigated through the crowd of Manhattan's elite, women in diamonds, men in bespoke suits. Nate nodded at people he knew, forcing a smile that felt like a rictus of pain. They reached the heavy double doors of the gold ballroom. Nate hesitated. "What is wrong with you?" Sasha hissed. "Open the door." Nate pushed the doors open. The room was intimate, reserved for the top tier of guests. In the center of the room, holding court, was Isabella. She was seated on a velvet settee, looking like a queen on a throne. She wore a midnight blue velvet gown that draped elegantly over her body. The dress was cut to accommodate her pregnancy, highlighting the curve of her belly rather than hiding it. She wore sapphires around her neck that were likely older than the hotel itself. She was laughing softly at something the deputy mayor was saying. Her hand rested protectively on her stomach. Sasha froze. Her grip on Nate's arm slackened. "That's her," Sasha whispered. "She's pregnant, heavily pregnant." "Yes," Nate choked out. "I thought you said she was a shark," Sasha muttered, confused. "She looks like a mother." Isabella turned. Her eyes scanned the room and locked onto Nate. The smile didn't leave her face, but the warmth vanished from her eyes, replaced by a glint of steel. She beckoned them over with a single finger. "Walk," Nate told his legs. "Just walk." The 30 feet between the doorway and Isabella's settee felt like miles. Every step was a labor. Nate could feel the sweat pooling at the base of his spine. As they approached, the circle of people around Isabella parted, sensing the arrival of the director of operations. "Nathaniel," Isabella said. Her voice was smooth, carrying effortlessly over the low hum of conversation. "You're late." "Traffic," Nate lied. "Ms. Rossellini, I'd like to introduce you to—" He froze. He couldn't say it. He couldn't say "my partner," not to the woman who was carrying his child. Sasha, sensing his hesitation and annoyed by it, stepped forward and extended her hand. "Sasha Montgomery," she said, flashing her brightest, most PR-perfect smile. "It is an absolute honor to meet you, Ms. Rossellini. Nate has told me so much about your vision. This hotel is simply stunning." Isabella looked at Sasha's outstretched hand for a beat too long before taking it. Her handshake was firm, cool. "Ms. Montgomery?" Isabella said, her gaze sweeping over Sasha's emerald dress, noting the plunging neckline. "A pleasure. Nathaniel didn't mention you worked in fashion, but the dress speaks for itself." Sasha beamed, mistaking the comment for a compliment. "Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm in PR for Valentino. We believe image is everything." "Image is certainly something," Isabella agreed enigmatically. She shifted slightly, adjusting her position due to the baby. "Oh my gosh," Sasha said, dropping her voice to a faux intimate tone, gesturing to Bella's stomach. "When are you due? You look absolutely glowing. I don't know how you do it. Running an empire and handling all that." Nate wanted to die. He wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. "I'm due in 3 months," Isabella said, her eyes flickering to Nate. "And I do it because I have no choice. The father is out of the picture." Sasha gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Oh, that is awful. I am so sorry. Men can be so unreliable, can't they? Nate closed his eyes. Please, Sasha, stop talking. They certainly can, Isabella said, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. He decided his career was more important than his family. He felt that a child would be a burden to his lifestyle. Sasha shook her head, full of righteous indignation on behalf of this billionaire stranger. That is disgusting. Honestly, you're better off without him. A man who would walk out on a pregnant woman is the lowest kind of coward. Nate and I were just talking about this the other day. How loyalty is a lost art. The silence that followed was deafening to Nate, though the party noise continued around them. Isabella looked at Nate. Her expression was unreadable. Was it amusement, rage, sorrow? Is that so, Nathaniel? Isabella asked softly. You value loyalty? Nate opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He was paralyzed. Nate is the most loyal man I know, Sasha answered for him, wrapping her arm possessively around his bicep. That's why he's so dedicated to this hotel. He treats it like it's his own. Yes, Isabella said, her voice dropping an octave. He certainly acted like it was his own. Suddenly the chimes rang out, signaling the start of the speeches. The ballroom lights dimmed, and a spotlight hit the small stage at the front of the room. I believe that is my cue, Isabella said. She placed her hands on the arms of the settee to rise. Here, let me help, Sasha offered, reaching out. I can manage, Isabella said sharply. She stood up, her posture perfect, her dignity like a force field. Enjoy the evening, Ms. Montgomery. And you, Nathaniel. Pay close attention to the speech. We're making some changes to the org chart. She walked toward the stage, her head held high. Sasha turned to Nate, whispering excitedly. She likes me. Did you see that? We bonded over the deadbeat dad. God, I can't believe some guy dumped a billionaire. What an idiot. Nate stared at the stage, his heart beating so hard it hurt his ribs. Yeah, he whispered. An idiot. Isabella stepped up to the microphone. The room went silent. She didn't need notes. She stood in the spotlight, looking every inch the matriarch of a dynasty. Good evening, she began. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Isabella Rossellini. For the past 5 years, I have lived in the shadows of this company, watching from afar. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the room. She found Nate in the darkness. Tonight I am stepping into the light, not just as the owner of the Obsidian, but as a woman reclaiming her history. She took a breath. This hotel was built by my grandfather on a simple promise, that a home is not a place, but a feeling of safety, of trust. When we break that trust, whether with our guests or in our personal lives, we lose the foundation of who we are. The crowd was captivated. This wasn't a corporate speech. It was a confession. Recently, Isabella continued, her voice gaining strength, I was told that I was too simple to understand the complexities of this world. I was told that I needed to be left behind so that real work could be done. Sasha frowned, leaning toward Nate. That sounds specific. Who is she talking about? Nate couldn't breathe. But I have learned, Isabella said, her hand resting on her bump. The true power isn't about the suit you wear, or the car you drive, or the title on your business card. True power is standing by the people you made promises to. And when those promises are broken, there are consequences. She smiled, a dazzling, terrifying smile. Therefore, I am announcing a complete restructuring of our executive team, effective immediately. We are purging the rot from the foundation, because the Obsidian deserves leadership that understands the meaning of the word honor. She leaned into the mic. Thank you, Enjoy the champagne. It's on the house. Unlike loyalty, which must be earned. The room erupted in applause. Sasha clapped enthusiastically. "Wow," Sasha said. "She is intense. I love it. Purging the rot. That's bold. I wonder who's getting fired." Nate knew. He felt a vibration in his pocket. He pulled out his phone. It was an email notification. Subject: Notice of termination of employment. From Office of the Chairwoman. To Nathaniel Sterling. He stared at the screen. "Nate?" Sasha asked, noticing his pale face. "What is it? Is it good news? Did we get the bonus?" Before Nate could answer, the lights came up. Isabella was making her way off the stage, but instead of heading to the VIP section, she was walking straight toward them, and this time, she wasn't alone. Daniel Pendleton and 2 large security guards were flanking her. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She stopped 3 feet from them. The pleasantries were gone. "Ms. Rossellini?" Sasha asked, her smile faltering. "That speech was inspiring. Ms. Montgomery," Isabella said, cutting her off. Her voice was cold, clinical. "I think there has been a misunderstanding that I should clear up." "A misunderstanding?" Sasha asked. "You mentioned earlier that the father of my child was a coward and an idiot for leaving me," Isabella said. "Yes?" Sasha said, glancing nervously at Nate. "And you mentioned that your boyfriend, Nathaniel, is the definition of loyalty," Isabella continued. "Yes." Sasha's voice was barely a squeak. Isabella looked at Nate. The look was filled with a profound, exhausting sadness. "Tell her, Nate," Isabella said softly. "Tell me what?" Sasha snapped, her head whipping toward Nate. "Nate, what is going on?" Nate looked at Sasha. Then he looked at Isabella, the woman who had made him soup, who had ironed his shirts, who was carrying his child, and who just fired him. Nate stammered. "He can't say it," Isabella said, turning back to Sasha. "So I will. I am not just the owner, Ms. Montgomery. I am Isabella Sterling. I am Nathaniel's wife." Sasha's face went slack. "Ex-wife?" "Not yet," Isabella said, holding up her left hand, where her wedding ring still sat, glittering under the chandelier. "Technically, he is still my husband. And he is the man who walked out on me 3 months ago because he thought I was poor. He is the father of this child." The silence in the immediate vicinity was absolute. Guests nearby had stopped drinking. They were watching. Sasha looked at Isabella's stomach, then at Nate, then back at Isabella. The color drained from her face as the horrific reality crashed down on her. She had just insulted the billionaire owner of the hotel to her face, calling the father of her child a coward while standing next to him. "Nate," Sasha whispered, her voice trembling with humiliation and rage. "Is this true?" Nate looked down at his shoes. "Sasha, let me explain. You abandoned her?" Sasha shrieked, her voice cracking. "For me? Because you thought she was... nobody." "He thought he outgrew me," Isabella corrected calmly. She signaled to the security guards. "Mr. Sterling is no longer an employee of the Obsidian. Please escort him off the premises. He can collect his personal effects from the loading dock tomorrow." One of the guards stepped forward, grasping Nate's arm. "Wait," Nate pleaded, looking at Isabella. "Bella, please, don't do it like this. Not in front of everyone." "You left me in a kitchen with a separation paper while I was pregnant, Nate," she said, her voice devoid of mercy. "You didn't care about my dignity then. I don't care about yours now." She turned to Sasha. "Ms. Montgomery, you are welcome to stay and enjoy the party, though I suspect your ride home just lost his company car." Isabella turned her back on them and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of adoring guests. Sasha stood frozen for a second, feeling the eyes of the New York elite burning into her. She looked at Nate, who was being pulled away by security. "Don't touch me!" Sasha hissed at Nate as he reached for her hand. "Don't you dare touch me!" She turned on her heel and marched toward the exit, leaving Nate alone in the grip of the guards, watching the life he thought he wanted shatter into 1,000,000 expensive pieces. 6 months later, the spring sun was shining over New Jersey, but inside the Highway Inn, the fluorescent lights buzzed with a depressing hum. Nathaniel Sterling adjusted his name tag. It was plastic, pinned crookedly to a polyester blazer that didn't fit quite right. He wasn't the director of operations anymore. He was the night shift manager at a roadside motel off the turnpike. It was the only job he could get. Isabella had kept her word. The blacklist was real. Every luxury hotel from Manhattan to Miami had politely declined his application. The industry was small, and word traveled fast. Nathaniel Sterling was the man who abandoned the Rossellini heiress. He was radioactive. Sasha had left him exactly 3 minutes after they walked out of the gala. She called an Uber from the sidewalk, told him he was a fraud, and blocked his number before the car even arrived. The Tribeca loft was gone. The Audi was repossessed. Nate was now living in a studio apartment, smaller than the walk-in closet he used to share with Sasha. The automatic doors of the motel slid open. The mail carrier walked in and tossed a bundle on the counter. "Just one for you, Nate," the carrier said. It was a thick envelope from Pendleton and Associates. Nate's hands trembled as he opened it. It was the final divorce decree. The terms were absolute. He received nothing. No alimony, no settlement. He had signed a prenup years ago, thinking it protected his meager savings, never realizing it was actually protecting her empire. But at the bottom of the envelope, there was a smaller, cream-colored envelope. Nate opened it. Inside was a photograph. It was a professional portrait of Isabella. She was sitting in a garden, looking more beautiful and at peace than he had ever seen her. In her arms, wrapped in a white cashmere blanket, was a baby boy. He had dark curls and eyes that looked exactly like Nate's. On the back of the photo, in Isabella's elegant handwriting, was a brief note. "His name is Gabriel. He is healthy, he is loved, and he will be raised to know the value of things that cannot be bought. You are free now, Nathaniel. You have the life you built for yourself. I hope it keeps you warm." Nate stared at the photo. He traced the face of the son he would never know. He looked around the dingy motel lobby with its peeling wallpaper and the smell of stale coffee. He realized then that he had been standing in a gold mine for 5 years, complaining that he wanted to find a treasure. He had held the winning lottery ticket and thrown it away because he didn't like the paper it was printed on. A customer walked up to the desk, slamming a credit card down. "Hey, buddy," the customer snapped. "I've been ringing the bell for 5 minutes. Are you checking me in or what?" Nate looked up, blinking back tears that felt like acid. He slid the photo into his pocket, right next to his heart, where it would burn him for the rest of his life. "I'm sorry, sir," Nate whispered, typing into the computer. "I'm listening now." Nathaniel Sterling spent his life chasing an image of success, only to realize too late that he was running away from the reality of it. He measured his worth by the price of his suit and the title on his door, blinding himself to the woman who loved him when he was nothing. In the end, Isabella didn't destroy Nate. She simply let him destroy himself. She reclaimed her power, her name, and her future, proving that true royalty isn't about wealth. It's about character. Nate got exactly what he asked for. A life without burdens, leaving him with the heaviest burden of all, regret. And that is the story of Nathaniel and Isabella. It's a brutal reminder that sometimes, when we think we're trading up, we're actually trading in everything that matters. I want to know what you think. Did Isabella go too far by blacklisting him? Or did Nate deserve every bit of his karma? If you were in Isabella's shoes, would you have told him the truth sooner? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And subscribe so you don't miss our next real-life drama. Thanks for watching, and remember, be careful what you wish for.